Welcome everybody, you asked for it and you're gonna get it. You guys voted for My Chemical Romance this week, and so we are talking teenagers. Apart from Black Parade, it's probably my favorite My Chemical Romance song, and I know what you're probably thinking. Wow, he really likes the hits. Yeah, I'm the pop song professor. It's what I do. And don't crucify me for this, but to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of My Chemical Romance. I love like 2 or 3 of the top tracks, but I don't really like the breadth and the depth of what they write for the most part. It's just a little bit too dark for me. I was never quite a part of that mentality movement. I always was, I think, a little bit more of a positive and optimistic person, and I believed in the value of hard work to fix all of my problems, whereas I think to really appreciate some of My Chemical Romance's songs, you have to experience some level of utter futility, and I thankfully haven't experienced that yet, but it could happen. Don't get me wrong, there's been tough times, and there's been times in my life where listening to a My Chemical Romance song would have felt like the perfect thing, but I just never really had them around growing up, and it would have been more the exception than the rule to listen to them for that sort of an emotional feeling. I know what you guys are thinking. The pop song professor can't relate to us! And on one level that's true, but I did wear a black turtleneck. I mean, that's kind of emo, right? But on an actual, real positive note, I feel like I'm gonna be able to look at a lot of their songs, and I have already looked at a lot of their songs from a more objective point of view. And as far as their lyrics go, I really like what I see. Some people, when they get emo and they get all dark and they get all dramatic, they just like blah, 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 and they say whatever like comes to their mind and they end up just complaining about things. My Chemical Romance tries to make sense of struggles, and I really, really appreciate that and admire that, and they do a really good job in their lyrics. And so I am excited to be explaining this song to you today. Also, songwriters, stick around to the end of the video. I've got a tip that you can learn about songwriting from this song. 2 things I want you to keep in mind as we explain the song. Number 1, Gerard Way was 29 when he wrote this. Imagine having your entire fan base be basically angry teenagers, but you're an angry almost 30-something now. And he was finding it maybe at times hard to relate to his audience. In fact, the song was sort of inspired when he was sitting on a subway train in, I think, New York City, and saw that he was surrounded by teenagers, and he felt a little bit apprehensive. He was kind of like, wow, I'm on the outside of this circle because I'm 29 and they're all teenagers. I don't have that same connection with them that I used to, and it was frightening for him. So yeah, in verse 1 he says, they're gonna clean up your looks with all the lies in the books to make a citizen out of you. This line is talking about the government and saying how it views teenagers and how it sees them as people that it has to form into being model citizens, people who will continue to replicate the system that we're currently in. He continues, they're gonna rip up your heads, your aspirations to shreds, another cog in the murder machine. And that's just going back to the exact same thing, like you are just pieces in the machine, and the government wants to form you into, you know, whatever's gonna serve it best. It doesn't care about your aspirations. It's gonna tear up your head, and whatever thing you wanted to do doesn't matter. You are gonna just serve the larger machine. Gerard Way actually says this in a quote. He says, it's a commentary on kids being viewed as meat by the government and by society. That's how I felt in school, and after 9/11 happened, that's how I felt in general. It's very important that this song is here because I always viewed this as about these kids in the parade who had killed themselves, who had made a big mistake. It's a very powerful song. Really about teenagers who feel so desperately or so strongly wanting something more than what everybody else is giving them or not giving them, that they're so willing to kill themselves. And then in the chorus he sings, they said, probably speaking about parents or an older generation, all teenagers scare the living shit out of me. They could care less as long as someone will bleed. And then he turns to the teenagers and he says, so darken your clothes or strike a violent pose. Maybe they'll leave you alone, but not me. And this is him saying like the older generation is afraid of what you're willing to do, and they know that you're going to change things. And honestly, they're probably right to be afraid. So if being, you know, quote unquote emo, I know I'm oversimplifying things, darken your clothes, strike a violent pose, which seem to be some of the hallmarks of the, you know, the emo culture in 2007 when this was written, and just embrace who you are, be yourself. He goes on to say that even though they'll try to leave you alone and they won't want to help you, not me, I'm here with you. And it's him kind of speaking, maybe in a way, to those kids on the subway saying, hey, I am part of your culture because I'm with you. And then we get to the scary verse, the verse that seems to be about school shootings. He says, you're never gonna fit in much, kid, but if you're troubled and hurt, what you got under your shirt will make them pay for the things that they did. And now the problem's not necessarily the government or parents, it's kind of other teenagers. Earlier in the verse, it talks about him, this person he's talking to, not really being able to fit in and wanting to just make a statement and do something big and make people pay for the way that they've made that person feel. Gerard Way says that song almost didn't fit on the record, but it's a top topic that's so important to our culture. It's about a really big problem in America where kids are killing kids. The only thing I learned in high school is that people are very violent and territorial. And if you watch the music video, we see something very similar. Gerard Way and the band are having like this concert in this empty room. Kids bust through chain doors and they sit there and they rock for a little bit, but then they storm the stage and start taking over from the band. They like push everybody away from the mics, they steal the guitars, and they just like take over. It's like they're doing to the band what the band is singing about kids doing to the world. Not even My Chemical Romance can control them. And here's my tip for songwriters. Guys, if you are writing songs or something you can learn from teenagers, check out that first stanza and look at the rhyme scheme. It's a very crisp and clean AAB CCB. We have looks, books, you, gun, son, do, work, smirk, clean, head shreds machine. And if you listen to how that makes you feel as you're listening to the song, notice that it kind of creates a tension and then it solves it. So when you have 3 lines like this, looks, books, you, looks and books, they sound like they make sense, and then you just sort of comes out of nowhere and it's flat and you're like, wait, where's the rhyme for this? And it doesn't help that the next line is gun, but then that rhymes with son, so you're like, okay, maybe things are gonna get better, but there's still kind of that unresolved tension of like, whatever happened to the rhyme for you? And then we get into the 6th line and he says, so they can watch all the things you do, and it's kind of like, oh, peace is restored, balance is here, and it's a way to kind of create a little bit of tension for your audience, especially if they've listened to the song before and they know it's coming. I can almost guarantee you that hardly anybody is ever going to turn that song off before the end of those 6 lines, just because they're waiting for that resolution, and if they did, there's almost like this emptiness or this lack of completion that they have to live with. So using a predictable form can be good, and stretching your rhymes out between a couple of lines that are kind of far apart can bring a sense of wholeness to a stanza. But yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Please comment a My Chemical Romance song you'd like me to explain in the future. Songwriters, there is an email list down below. You can get songwriting tips and all sorts of cool stuff like that. Please sign up, be cool. And everybody, I hope that you have a great day.